Welcome to the dOrg Hot Seat. If you've been in Web3 for a while, you've probably come across Protocol Labs, or at least you've used some of its products. If you've ever interacted with an NFT, chances are that the metadata of that NFT was stored in IPFS, Interplanetary File System, which was one of the main products from Protocol Labs. Well, Protocol Labs have a lot more on the storage side. They're also the creators of Filecoin, a decentralized storage network with a built-in economic model. One of the differences between IPFS and Filecoin is that economic model, given that Filecoin is pay-to-play, but also Filecoin allows for a different set of storage providers, more optionality, more features, etc. And now, coming in hot, also with its own Filecoin Virtual Machine, which enables smart contracts in Filecoin, opening the door to programmable data. Yeah, you've heard that tune before. Smart contracts on Ethereum brought programmable currencies. This is such a 2017 tune though. And the FVM, the Filecoin Virtual Machine, brings programmable data. To explain what the heck that means, we have Sarah Tiam, developer experience lead for the FVM. Let me know what you think, but I am filing this episode as one of the most interesting ones in the category of decentralized storage.
Sarah, you can take it away. First of all, thank you for coming.
Yeah, of course. Thanks so much for having me on today. It's really nice to meet the dOrg community. Yeah, this is like the first hot seat situation that I've been in. So please be kind. All right. So nice to meet all of you. My name is Sarah. I am the Filecoin Virtual Machine FVM developer experience lead. So I lead a team of dev advocates that we write education content, docs, tutorials, we give talks, workshops, and so on how you can adopt the Filecoin Virtual Machine and what you can build with it. Some background about me before I came into Protocol Labs. So right now, Filecoin Virtual Machine is part of Protocol Labs, which is the R&D lab behind Filecoin as a whole. So I'm at Protocol Labs right now. Before this, I was working at the Singapore government doing something like international developer relations, which was pretty interesting. I was pretty curious and it was fun for about 2 years there. And before that, I was at Microsoft for about 5 years, doing multiple things at once, product marketing, and finally developer relations in Microsoft as well. So that's how I kind of fell into DevRel, and I've been doing it ever since. So that's a little bit about me. And that's me coming in from Web 2 into Web 3. I have a fresh pair of eyes into how people look at Web 3, and it has been useful, I would say, to help to simplify a lot of these things, these concepts that people are new to, and especially with Filecoin Virtual Machine, which is very new. We only launched back in March. We launched the mainnet back in mid-March this year. And since I joined the team in September last year, we've been building it since, the inception of it came around in early 2022. And we were more rigorously building around mid-2022 all the way to now with a team of about 4 engineers. So you can imagine there's a lot of work has gone into it. I have the privilege of representing my team, but we have a really huge team and partner teams behind us that have made this happen. So a lot of interesting stuff to share with all of you today. I hope some of you have already tried out FVM at the multiple hackathons we've been doing. So I will cover what you can build with FVM. It's definitely been a lot of things that it's been developing. So if you have attended one of our talks before, this could be a little bit different from what you've heard previously. We've had a lot of new features coming in for Filecoin Virtual Machine, especially around the storage side of things and how we can have more programmable storage in Web3. So yeah, without further ado and rambling, I shall get into my presentation and talk about the FVM itself, and definitely welcome your questions on top of that. So let's get into it. All right, so I'll be talking about programming on the FVM. If you are interested to find out more about the FVM, we have our Twitter channel over there, FVM Dev. We also have a Phil Builders channel where we sometimes do tutorials and live coding on the channel with FVM. Yep. So yeah, definitely follow us there. So Filecoin Virtual Machine, just to give some broad context on, you definitely know about Filecoin. You might not know all the different things within Filecoin, and you might be wondering, Filecoin has been around for about 5 to 7 years now. Why is compute only coming in now? This is because we have had our founder Juan Benet has had this Filecoin master plan since day one, and these are the huge 3 steps that we had in the plan, and we are now on step 3. So step 1 was to build the Filecoin decentralized storage network itself with all the storage providers on board, figuring out what our L0 protocol would look like, how that would function. Step 2 would be onboarding and safeguarding humanity's data. So we are still doing a lot of data onboarding as of today. And lastly, would be bringing compute to the data to enable web scale applications. Briefly, you can kind of think of it as a vision for us to become what AW is to Web 2, in terms of Filecoin becoming what that is to Web 3. So by having like one of the largest decentralized storage networks out there today, I think it's at about 20 exabytes, if I'm not wrong. We hope that once we add compute on top of that, we would enable a very something very similar to a server-like experience and allow people to build applications that are truly decentralized. So some clarifications on the Filecoin stack. We get a lot of questions around this, and I wanted to clarify how all these work in complement and how they are different at the same time. So you might have heard of IPFS, Filecoin, they are not the same. So IPFS is a peer-to-peer network. It is mostly about pinning data across different nodes that you or a community that you are part of or some service providers can run. So IPFS is mostly as a pinning service where we hold information, and we use it in complement really closely with Filecoin and FVM as a way to pin data that you can quickly retrieve, whereas data stored on Filecoin, which is a layer 0, and that is on-chain, is cryptographically stored, and it requires to be cryptographically unsealed to then retrieve the data, which can take slightly longer time. So this was mostly around archival data, and we have quite a few projects in the work make retrieval a lot faster from Filecoin directly, but in the meantime, we use it very closely in complement with IPFS as a pinning service. FVM itself is a layer 1 on top of the layer 0. So this is compute over state. When I say compute over state, what it refers to is that it is writing logic around the metadata of storage deals on the Filecoin network. So on the Filecoin network, you have a huge decentralized storage network. Within this network, it is supported by a whole community of storage providers. And these storage providers so they are the ones that store your data off-chain, but on-chain, they are making a deal with a client that wants to store a piece of data. So if you want to store a JPEG, you would then make a deal with a storage provider. The storage provider would then publish your storage deal onto the network and then store your data off-chain. These storage deals have metadata to them, so things like how long your storage deal is meant to last for, what's the size of data within it, and what SEM then does is to write logic around the metadata of your storage deals. So we are able to manipulate the data without having to make it very costly to unseal the data and then manipulate it separately. Of course, you can still do those, especially in things like decentralized compute framework that we have, where you actually do unseal the data and compute it separately. But then FVM is the one that helps you to move your storage deals around, write logic around it, and manipulate it there. So it is meant to make it much easier to move your data around with FVM on Filecoin. So that is the layer 1. And then that enables the layer 2, which is where all the builders and developers come in, where you can build your storage-related applications and solutions on top of Filecoin using FVM. Right. So I hope this gives a little bit of a differentiation into what the different components of the Filecoin stack are like and how we use them all together. It's kind of like an evolution that we created using chronological order. You can build a lot with FVM. There are a ton of use cases that we have enabled. I'll talk through some of them to give a little bit of a focus. But by and large, there are things like, almost anything that you imagine that you can do with storage, right? And also that you could do with the collateral within the Filecoin network. So there is a whole space where you could do DeFi projects, like, for example, staking pools, under collateralized lending to enable more storage providers to participate in the network with a lower amount of collateral that they need to lock in. You could also do storage-focused applications like data DAOs. It's a really big use case for us. It is unique to the Filecoin ecosystem because you're able to build a DAO that is focused on a certain data set and usually a typically very large data set that you can then manage and manage and do multiple and enable a whole community based off of the data set. You could preserve the data set, you could provide access control to the data set and earn profits off of it to add to your DAO's treasury and use that treasury to enable the perpetual deal renewal of your specific data set. So your data set could last forever, right? So again, a lot of things that you could do on FVM. But I don't have time to get into each of them. So I'll get a little bit more into what people are building today and some focus areas on what we are currently focused on building right now. So we have FVM builder cohorts and projects. We've had a whole cohort that launched the mainnet shortly after we launched the mainnet in March. They have deployed all their contracts online. There have been about 55 projects that have built with FVM and launched the mainnet as of today that we know of. We've also had like a bulk of them being staking and leasing pools, which I talked about the DeFi opportunity earlier on. So these are a large part of the builder cohorts and projects that have come up and are continuing to build right now. We are also running a ton of hackathons. We've received about 800 FVM submissions to date, like qualified users of FVM to date. So a lot of people are really building on top of it, and there's really strong momentum. So we're very excited to see the different kinds of projects that are coming out of this. Okay, and for the engineering side of things, talking a little bit about the FVM architecture. If you look to the right, that is the diagram for what FVM, how the FVM architecture looks like. There are two areas over here that I wanted to focus on. So as you can see in the bottom area of the diagram, you will see how FVM is a virtual machine that runs on top of a Filecoin node. So in case you were wondering, you can run multiple instances of FVM on top of a Filecoin node, but that's where it sits. On top of that, the part that is really interesting for developers will be around actors. So actors in the Filecoin ecosystem translate to smart contracts. We call them actors because they function slightly differently. So it is technically defined as an actor. We have two categories of actors here that developers can use. One would be native actors and one would be foreign actors. So on the left, you'll see native actors. A subset of this is built-in system actors that we as developers cannot touch. These are just built into the Filecoin protocol. They are system actors like the market actor, which runs your storage deals, or the miner actor, which runs your storage provider, so we cannot touch those. But as developers, we are able to use the user-defined WASM actors. The whole thing here is built on WebAssembly. We use WASM time under the hood. For user-defined WASM actors, what you could do is that you could choose your preferred framework that you want to compile to WASM. So we have some SDKs that are built out for Go, AssemblyScript, and Rust right now as of today, and we hope the community builds more. But this will allow you to then compile to WASM actors and use it on Filecoin mainnet. However, today we have not launched WASM actors to mainnet, and that is still in development. And I'll talk about foreign actors in a second on what you can use today. That's something that's on the roadmap for either end 2023 to early 2024. And right now, as of now, if you wanted to experiment with it, you could use those SDKs I just mentioned to build in LocalNet. But the stuff that you can build on today is our foreign actors. So one that we have launched on mainnet today, which is when I talk about the launch, is what we have launched. We wanted to target the biggest community of developers that we knew out there. So we launched the FVM EVM compatible version. So we call it the FEVM. It allows you to write in Solidity, use Hardhack, use MetaMask, use Foundry, all the tools that you are familiar with to write these smart contracts that will then, so let's say you write a Solidity contract as you know it, a simple ERC20 token, and you wanted to maybe involve some protocols from the involve some methods from the Filecoin protocol. We have a live Filecoin.solidity that allows you to access all the different protocols on the Filecoin network pretty seamlessly. So you just need to call those methods within your Solidity contract, and you can deploy the whole contract. When you deploy it, you could deploy it using MetaMask to pay for the transaction, but you will be deploying it effectively to the Filecoin network and not to the Ethereum network. The benefit of using FEVM versus EVM and writing separately to a separate storage platform is it allows you a lot more granular control around the logic that you want to write for storage and retrieval. This is really the unique value proposition here for you to use FEVM versus just FVM, versus just EVM. And by doing so, it should be much more efficient in cost, performance, and so on, especially if, let's say, storage is a huge part of your solution. So that's what we launched today. But all in all, the FVM itself is meant to be VM agnostic. So today we support EVMs. We are built in such a way that we could be adaptable to support as well. So maybe in the future we might be supporting things like Solana and so on. But we intend to be as VM agnostic as possible. Some things are coming out on the roadmap. So user-defined WASM access, as I mentioned earlier on, so that would be a really big one for us coming in early 2024. Account abstraction is something else that we're looking at as well, not in the same way that is defined in the Ethereum community. We're thinking about account abstraction in the sense of allowing new foreign non-blockchain runtimes to run on FVM in a permissionless way using account abstraction. So that's something that we're working on as well for the rest of 2023. And we are also working on IPC and FVM. So IPC is interplanetary consensus. That is kind of like our version of Cosmos that we've built out. So that has soft launched a few months ago. There is a testnet that is ready, and it should launch fully by this year. But we see it's kind of like a sidechain, and we see a lot of potential coming in with IPC and FVM building together, in the sense that it will allow more chain space. It will allow for faster. Right now block time is about 30 seconds. IPC by spinning up new subnets to allow transactions to become much faster than 30 seconds, which is not ideal for an application to run. It should be also much cheaper to have IPC running those subnets. So we see like the DApp solution space really growing exponentially once IPC and FVM are ready to use together. So that's something that we're working on for the rest of 2023 as well. Cool. So I'm going to run through really quickly on the section. I know I'm almost out of time, but current focus for FVM builders, one would be programmable storage markets. So that is around having programmatic storage and retrieval workflows. We're working on some ways to make it easier for developers to use storage and retrieval workflows with FVM and to integrate them into their dApps. We're also looking at perpetual storage perpetual storage, which refers to renewal, repair, and replica of storage deals on the network, and how you can do that in an automated way. The other big focus for us will be around data DAOs and dApps. So I briefly explained what a data DAO can do. I have another talk that talks a little bit deeper into how we envision data DAOs working. But essentially, if you look to the diagram on your right, it kind of broadly resembles like a cake. You will have the base layer of storage management, which will be around repair workers, renewal workers, new storage deals, how you can create these deals and continue to repair and renew them. And then adding a layer on top of that, which is all the DAO stuff that we're very familiar with. Governance, tokenomics, and endowment management that will then relate to your data set being managed. We have a data DAO starter kit that you can actually use right now to start building your data DAOs and trying it out. But we have a lot more innovation coming in that space. The other thing that we are focusing on is building a very rich dev ecosystem for devs to choose Filecoin as a network of choice. So that involves us getting more partners integrated. So right now we have oracles like Teller, PIS, they're all coming in. SushiSwap is coming in as a DEX for integrated into the Filecoin network. And we're also looking at the graph coming in as well. So we're working on all these things to make it super easy for you to build your dApp on the Filecoin network. So I won't go into my data DAO example because I don't have time, but it would have been really cute corgis to show you. But here is a link central if you are interested to find out more. Follow us, find out our docs, use case ideas, requests for startups, community, grant opportunities. These are all in this link tree over here. So definitely check that out.
Wow, thank you. Thank you for this comprehensive overview, all squeezed in a little bit over 10 minutes. So appreciate the consideration for time. I think we can start with the hot seat questions. I will start with the first. You mentioned that the Filecoin VM is actually VM agnostic. I guess that's really because it's based on WASM. So you're compiling like Solidity, for example, you'd be compiling Solidity to WASM. Is that where we're going? I have a follow-up question if this is a yes. Okay, cool.
Yes, we are thinking about compiling Solidity to WASM. We also have a fully feature-complete Ethereum JSON RPC API that we use. Yeah, so that has really helped a lot in the architecture.
Yeah. You also mentioned that like the reason why someone would use the Filecoin VM versus Ethereum or another blockchain is because you get all of this flexibility and control over the data storage and data management. So right now, if you write in Solidity, what is happening under the hood? You have extra opcodes that you can access, like, and how can you access those opcodes? Like, what is exactly the conversion here, and how do you expand the functionality of Solidity?
Yeah, we do have opcodes, although I don't know if they are accessible right now. Yeah, I do not think our opcodes are accessible, but we definitely have those under the hood.
So for
Yeah,
an Ethereum developer trying to access these extra features on storage, um, can they do it just with Solidity, or they would have to use the native WASM modules?
they could do it with just Solidity. It would have to rely mostly on what our Filecoin.solidity library offers today. But right now, the library mirrors what all the different methods that you can access on the Filecoin protocol as a Filecoin developer, as in like just purely on the Filecoin protocol, what you could access today is mirrored within the Solidity library that we have. So just purely based off of that is how you will access the different storage and retrieval method that you wanted to use.
Great, thank you. How about other questions? Okay, Nick, go ahead.
Yeah, first off, I just want to say thank you, Sarah, for taking the time to go through that presentation. That was fantastic. I've been following Filecoin for a while, and it's really exciting
Thank
stuff you guys are
you.
working on.
Yeah, it's been a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, and so I guess, and you touched on this briefly with FVM, and I was just curious about the data management and autonomy side of things. You know, uh, since the introduction of FVM, it sounds like data management has or is becoming fully autonomous, right? You could, if you could, I guess maybe provide some detail into this automation and streamlining of the process for storage clients seeking optimal storage providers. How does this process ensure the best match for specific client needs, right? I guess
Mm,
just to clarify, like in traditional cloud storage systems, the onboarding and management of data can involve, several different steps, right? And even sometimes require manual oversight to ensure, data is stored securely and efficiently. So the process in that case might involve selecting a storage provider, determining storage requirements, negotiating terms, ensuring data is correctly uploaded
mhm.
and retrievable. So with the introduction of FVM and its smart contract capabilities, these processes could essentially be automated, right? So
Mhm.
I guess, for example, a smart contract could be written to automatically seek out the best storage provider for a client's, specific needs based on
Yeah.
certain criteria, such as, I don't know, cost, location, availability, redundancy. So I guess with this new level of autonomy, it also raises new challenges and questions. So how does a smart contract determine the best storage provider? How does it negotiate the terms, and how does it handle potential disputes or issues such as data loss or provider failure?
Yeah. Okay. Huge question. But great question. So yeah, let me start maybe at deal making, right? Let's see simple deal making. I guess it is wrong. So before FVM came into place, like the only people that would be interacting with the Filecoin protocol would be storage providers on our network. In order to make a deal, you could run a Lotus node yourself, and Lotus being our reference node implementation, you could run a node yourself, and you could use that to make a deal with a storage provider. It was an extremely complex process. Well, relatively. Okay, actually, yes, very complex process, but you have to key in a lot of details, like you just mentioned, around like the start and everything of the deal, all that. What you could do with FVM is that we have, so for example, we created like a template contract. It's called a deal client contract. We try to emulate the client as much as possible. And let me share this resource in the chat, but it's called the FVM deal making kit. It does explain a lot of what I'm about to say as one of to tackle one part of your question. But what it does is that it allows you to have a pretty easy interface where you can key in key information that you wanted to have within your deal. So things like how long do you want your deal to run for? What is the CID that you want to point to, the content ID referring to the JPEG that you have prepared as a piece of data to then get the content ID for? What content ID, what CID do you want to point towards to get stored? What is your preferred method of storing, as in of transferring data over to the storage provider to store? And so this is like a base contract interface that we've created that you can then key in and run within Solidity. And once you deploy the contract, it will allow you to set your deal running. What you can do with this as well is that you could set it in a programmatic fashion that every time maybe a piece of data is uploaded to your DAO, you could then trigger this deal client and you could automate how those fields are filled in. So things that we've realized once we ran this at a few hackathons for about 2 months, and we realized that one of the pain points was start and end epoch, are easily confused. It's something that could easily confuse maybe new developers, and they might key in the wrong epoch, and they might not actually have the deal proposal happen. So we've been making improvements over time. We're thinking about building either building a wrapper contract around it to make it even easier for people to key in the information to make the deal and automate it, or maybe creating a hard hat task that could reduce a lot of the errors for a lot of these fields. So you could maybe auto calculate what the using epoch is a really good example here, what the current epoch of the Filecoin network is at, what would be the ideal epoch for you to key into your deal and have it run, and you could edit it from there. So all these are enabled because FVM, EVM compatible version exists for us to be able to create all these improvisations on top of it and to make deal making so much easier, right? So that's ground zero where we have deal making accomplished. Now, when it comes to things like storage providers, right now we're talking to our Phil Plus team. So Phil Plus is a program that we run. If you haven't heard of it, it's a program that we run on top of the Filecoin network that allows us to kind of store the reputation of different storage providers that hit certain criteria with us and are KYC with us. We know their profiles well. We've been tracking their progress over time. There is a reputation board that exists today. It's completely off chain, by the way. But how can we use we've been exploring ways of how we could use the FVM EVM compatible version. I'm just going to keep saying FEVM from now on. How could we use FEVM to then tap into maybe an API on the reputation board and be able to draw out storage providers that fit certain criteria that the client wants? One of the key asks that we've had is due to GDPR requirements, how can we find storage providers that store data in a specific geography? So that hasn't been there's a process to get that done, and we're working on it right now. We have to get storage providers to start explicitly saying where they will store the data, and then being able to, once that's included within the reputation database, having the API be drawn into the client contract, for example, for you to select, or maybe it could promote the best storage provider for you to interact with. And so one of the things that we've actually done, maybe not on geography, but more around storage providers that have adopted a certain kind of hardware that makes it easier for you to retrieve your data. It's called Boost. So we actually have a way that we have created with the client contract that I have shared in the link here that I'm referring to, where you are able to have a queue of your storage providers that have adopted this technology. And so you can opt in for either it being an automated queue where maybe the first storage provider, as long as they have subscribed to the event of all deal proposals emitted from a client contract, then they will automatically form a queue to be the first storage provider to provide you with a fully made deal. And if that storage provider doesn't act within an hour or so, or a certain time limit, it would then automatically move on to the next storage provider and so on. Or you could opt in for a specific storage provider that you have maybe seen through a reputation board, or you already know off-chain in person that you want to work with, and you can stipulate that as your storage provider that you want to work with and submit your client contract to run programmatically to keep making deals for the application that you're trying to run. So I know I went on a bit of a tangent, but I hope I answered most of your question. It was a pretty big question. So if there are other parts that I missed, please let me know.
Yeah. Thank you, Sarah. You definitely touched on those. Appreciate it.
Yeah. So I mean, definitely these are things that we are thinking about. We want to get more granular with how you could, make it and also right now, on the developer side of things, these are a lot of things to wade through, right? The Filecoin ecosystem, let's not kid ourselves, it's not simple. But we are working with a lot of, a few trusted partners that we have that are building easier, progressively easier and easier front ends for you to interact with deal making options. So Lighthouse.storage is a really good example. Filecoin Data Tools is also a really great example. So they're starting to build either easy SDKs or easy APIs that you can use to then integrate like import and column method that will then go deal with everything I just described for you easily within your application. So that's something that we're working on right now as well.
Thank you, Sarah, that was a very, very, very helpful explanation. So
Yeah.
I think that will be that should be reference material for the organs that want to start to tinker with the FVM. We're running out of time, so I have one last question maybe to finish, and this one is, so I'm going to be kind of self-serving because my other hat is being the COO at DAppNote, and we're looking at, for what you mentioned in the last question, was that we're looking at these providers that are GDPR compliant, therefore they are KYC'd. And I'm often on the side of a little bit more radical decentralization. I was wondering, is the future of Filecoin going more and more towards the sort of more kind of compliant, kind of KYC, huge operators, or is there a place for the small node runner, for the completely decentralized, private, anonymous person that wants to contribute to the ecosystem?
You mean as a storage provider or as a client?
As a storage provider, yes.
Yes. Okay. Oh my God. Perfect question. One thing that we're working on. So, to answer your question, I think we are very much prioritizing decentralization as much as possible. The reason why we currently have like a few, I mentioned like a few tools earlier on. Like these are centralized versions, but they are very much meant as a temporary, well, not temporary, but like they will last for a long time and they will be important, but we don't see them as like a huge percentage of what the network should look like. Like as much as possible, storage providers should be as decentralized as possible. And I think we also have like a few criteria that we put in, with Phil Plus being a program that, by the way, is a really good incentive. Like it's a very strong incentive for storage providers to participate in the Phil Plus program because they get like based on the deals that they store, or as long as they're on the program, they get higher quality adjusted power within the network. But that we have certain criteria as well that stops like any one storage provider from getting too much quality adjusted power within the network. And on the back end, we have a even larger like community and governance team that's thinking about how we can prevent people from colluding behind the scenes off chain. Again, human behavior is something that is just really hard to control. So that's the other we're thinking about. So there are many precautions that we have in place to make sure that one storage provider doesn't become the be-all, end-all entity power of the network. Aside from that, as we get into the FVM side of things, right? So that's like not old school, but that's like OG Filecoin network stuff. As we get into the space of like FVM, and we're talking about like these aggregators, we refer to them as aggregators, which are basically storage providers that store any size of data, because some brief context there, that storage providers on the network are incentivized based on block rewards to store data 4 gigabytes and above and seal them into 32 gigabyte sectors. But of course, that doesn't serve everyone, because sometimes we all just have like small MD side use cases that we just want to get uploaded, right? So we call them aggregators, where they are able to take small amounts of data, and we really see that as the future of the Filecoin network. That will enable like much better data onboarding for the whole network to really like take off. And they'll batch these into like 4 gigabyte pieces and then get them stored into storage deals and so on. And there's like a lot of, and what our whole product team is working on right now is to build really clear specifications for how you can build decentralized aggregators. So as much as possible, we want not a centralized aggregator to be like the main bottleneck for people to send their data through, because you can't really control how they use your data. I mean, you hope for the best and you have compliance and everything, but you never know. But we want it to be like super small, decentralized aggregators that any developer could run within the application and just get that batched up and stored trustlessly into the Filecoin network. So I think that's what we're currently working on, and we see that as like a really, we are aiming for that to be a pretty large percentage of storage providers out there.
Great, thank you. That was a great response again. You're amazing, Sarah. That was really cool. With that, we have reached the end of the time for the dOrg hot seat. Once more, thank you for coming here. Thank you for spending your time helping us understand the Filecoin Virtual Machine. And thank you for responding to our questions.
Yeah,
That was great having you here.
It was definitely hot, but thank you so much for having me on this call. And I was like, yeah, this was awesome. I really enjoyed myself. This was great. Thank you so much.
Thanks to you. Thanks again. Have a great one.